Hi, and welcome back to Digital Defense. I am your host, Jordan Robertson, broadcasting to you live from the Bloomberg News Washington, D.C. News Bureau. This is our weekly cybersecurity web show where we talk all topics cybersecurity and digital privacy. The goal of the show is to be an interactive experience, answering your questions and hopefully providing you some tips and tricks to secure your digital lives. Today we wanted to talk about malware alerts from companies like Facebook or Comcast, other ISPs, other web services. We noticed some interesting chatter on social media this week that we wanted to bring to your attention and really talk about if you're trying to get into a social media account such as Facebook or even onto your home internet connection and you get an alert telling you that your computer is infected. We're entering an interesting space now where a few years ago, I would have told you adamantly, don't click on that link, it's a hacking attack. Now we've got companies trying to warn you about malware, and these are legitimate alerts. So I want to talk to you about today, how to tell the difference between the two, because it's an important distinction. So again, this is an interactive show, so we're going to be talking about malware alerts today. If you have any questions about that or any other cybersecurity or privacy topics, please feel free to leave those questions in the comment section. Wherever you're watching this, whether it's YouTube, Periscope, or the Bloomberg terminal or any other platform. We do really appreciate your questions. We really value them, and I'm here to answer any of them that you got. So why don't we just dive right in? I mean, the reason for the show is that we started to see some posts on social media like this one, that people are getting alerts like this one on Facebook telling them a pretty interesting thing and a pretty alarming thing. You cannot get back into your account until you download this malware scanner. And these alerts appear to be coming from Facebook. Facebook, since 2014 at least, has incorporated malware scanners into its platform. Before, everybody's understanding was that this was voluntary. Facebook was just providing the ability to download tools to help clean your home PC. But what individuals have started noticing is that in some cases it appears that they are locked out of their Facebook accounts if Facebook detects malware on their computer. Facebook rightly points out, in many of these cases, these might not even be authentic alerts. They might be, they might be malware trying to masquerade as a Facebook alert. Nevertheless, this topic is growing in interest, and a lot of folks are talking about it. And I wanted to walk you through again, what should you actually click on if you're getting these alerts on your computer? It's a really important, the answer to that is really important, because if you're locked out of a social media account that you use, your incentive to click on these links is very, very high. Now, if it's Facebook sending you the alert, then your computer is going to be cleaned and you'll be back online in no time. If it's a hacker who's sending you the alert, things might not end so well for you. So let me just walk you through what Facebook is warning people and what's happening behind the scenes a little bit when one of these alerts happens. So you may not be able to read the text, but this says, these are the alerts that Facebook will send to people. It says your computer needs to be cleaned. It looks like your computer is being affected by malware. We'll help you fix the problem to keep your account secure and prevent malware from spreading to friends. Malware is software that tries to steal personal information and causes problems when you use Facebook. Clicking or sharing links that contain spam can give your computer malware. So kind of like a boilerplate, we're here to help type of message. So if you're using Facebook and you get one of these alerts, what should you do? The answer is not so simple. If you're trying to log into an account and you get this alert, the most important thing that I can offer for you to do is to investigate whether that alert is actually real. The problem is if you start to click links, my general rule of thumb when it comes to online security is if you didn't ask for something, you don't want it. If somebody's knocking on your door at home selling you something, you didn't ask for it, you probably don't want it. The same is true online. So if you get a pop-up message, and we have, as cybersecurity reporters and security experts have told this to people for years, if you get a pop-up message on your computer telling you to download something, just ignore it. Shut the browser, shut the thing off. You don't want it. Whatever it is, you don't want it. As I mentioned at the top of the show, the twist here is that companies are actually offering these alerts as a legitimate way to help people clean their machines. So what are you supposed to do? Again, what I would say is if you get this alert, close your browser window, open up another browser window, and if you have multiple accounts with a platform like Facebook, try to log in under the other account. That's a little trick that some folks online have been suggesting, because Facebook's algorithm, and Facebook acknowledges this, these alerts are not tied just to your hardware. They're not tied just to your computer, even though it certainly reads like they are. They're also tied to your behavior as an individual. Now look, Facebook has billions of users. They're doing their best to try to figure out who's malicious, who's not. How do we keep hackers off of our platform? It's a very, very difficult job. And they, as part of that job, they ingest lots and lots of different data points and lots of different signals, intelligence, to figure out, are these people interacting with our platform real people? Are they bots? Are they hackers? Are they people who are up to no good? And there are all kinds of reasons why your computer or your account might flare, on their security systems. So one of the neat tricks is, even if you're getting a warning stating your computer appears to be compromised, if you close that browser window, clear your browser cookies. This is key as well, because that kind of refreshes, to the websites that you visit who you are. Clear your browser cookies, close the browser window, open up a new one, and either try to log in again as you, or try to log in as somebody else if you have another account. On the service. What that does is it kind of resets your connection to Facebook. If you've done all of those things, and even if you try to log in again as you, but you've cleared your browser history, you'll get a very clear indication whether Facebook believes it's your account that's compromised, your computer that's compromised, or potentially both, because people have reported being able to log in from the same computer with a different account, let's say a husband or a wife's or a child's account, and there are no problems. So Facebook has acknowledged that some of the signals intelligence that they collect, includes information about the account. So that's my first suggestion. Try to investigate whether this alert is real. Also, it would be helpful to copy and paste the language from this alert into your Google search engine. You'll be able to establish really quickly whether that's the same message other people are legitimately getting from Facebook, or whether it's a scam. There are a million and one cybersecurity companies out there now, and they all very closely track spam and malware campaigns. And if you're getting a pop-up message that doesn't feel right to you, it actually helps to enter the text of that into a Google search engine. It's a very easy way to try and determine whether the alert you're getting is real, or whether the alert you're getting is a malicious infection. And we're getting some questions in, so I want to get to a few of these. Thank you for writing in. And again, anybody who is watching this program, please feel free to send any questions or comments, in the comments section where you're watching this. So I want to show you another thing as well. So this is the pop-up alert that Facebook will send you. These are some of the responses that people have had. People are like, I was forced to download this stuff before I could access my account again, and there was nothing wrong and nothing on my computer. The antivirus software this person had, they believe, was doing the job just fine. We encounter this a lot. Whenever companies try to be proactive in alerting people to security threats, you run into an interesting problem. You're stopping them from using the service that they're trying to use. So you are a point of friction with people who are trying to use your service. People don't like that. Especially if, what's happened is it's a false alarm. It's a false positive, which this reader, appears to be indicating. That's always going to be a problem in cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is an art in many ways and not a science, which is surprising because it's all based on computer science. But it's you're accumulating clues, and you're trying to figure out, based on imperfect evidence, whether somebody is real or somebody is a bot or not. And the really, really hard part about this problem, and I can't stress this enough, is real people have their computers compromised. So their interactions with websites can be both legitimate and malicious at the same time. It's a bit of a physics conundrum, but you get the point. It's if my computer is compromised and I'm logging into Facebook legitimately, and a hacker is also piggybacking off my connection, I can be doing both legitimate things and illegitimate things at the same time. So what's a company to do? Block me altogether? I'm still a legitimate user as far as I'm aware. So these are the big questions that companies face when they're, when they're doing this stuff. So let me get to some of these questions. Again, this is an interactive show, so keep sending these in, and I'll get to as many of them as we can. This first question here is, why doesn't Facebook scan themselves? That would stop malware going through them. What I believe the viewer is asking, thank you for the question, is, why doesn't Facebook just focus on its own systems? Why doesn't Facebook focus on scanning any links or any messages that pass through it to look for malware? It's a very good question and a very reasonable question. Here's the answer. Here's the problem. So Facebook, of course, has visibility into every single thing that happens on its platform. And it mines that, just like Google does, for advertising. It mines where you go, who you talk to, how old you are, what type of websites you visit. When you're logged into Facebook, they are tracking you everywhere else you go on the internet. I don't know if a lot of people really know that, like what that actually looks like. But it's helpful to log out of these accounts when you're browsing the internet, unless you are, unless you consent to being tracked kind of everywhere you go. That's kind of a side note. But as a result of that, Facebook does look very, very closely, from our understanding, at security risks on its platform. I mean, if people view it as an unsafe place to browse, they're just going to use it less. Facebook has a very skilled security team. They've got a very big security team, and they take that very seriously. But there's a big problem when it comes to scanning internal systems like Facebook's, which is it's pretty trivial for hackers to change the way they attack people so that their attacks are undetectable for a time. All of these attacks will be noticed at some point, but companies use what they call signatures of an attack. These are telltale signs of either a piece of malware or a phishing campaign or a malicious link. You have to develop a signature to detect whether something is malicious. And to develop a signature, you have to have seen something before, have had it analyzed and classified as malicious. That's a process that computers are increasingly doing, artificial intelligence, machine learning, the buzzwords of today. But basically what that means is computers are doing that analysis instead of humans in many cases. The problem is that's not an instantaneous process. So there will always, always, always be a window of time between when an attacker launches an attack and when a company like Facebook or any others can reliably detect it and block it. So what does that mean for users who receive these messages in the in-between times? They're going to be vulnerable. So Facebook is doing things like alerting users to, hey, we think that you're infected. You should download this software. And apparently in some cases, even locking people out of their accounts, if they believe the infection is severe enough, until those individuals clean their machines. And it's a pretty aggressive approach, but it's not necessarily, unreasonable. A lot of good questions here. I'll answer some more of these. Facebook is a social media platform, not an antivirus software developer. How does this make sense? Simple answer to that. Facebook partners with other firms. A couple of these are here. Trend Micro, ESET. These are a couple of the companies that Facebook partners with. So these are, bona fide antivirus security software developers. They do all the hard work of analyzing malware, cataloging it, classifying it, eliminating the threats, and they all have their different strengths and weaknesses. So what Facebook is doing is saying, hey, we're not in the business of classifying malware the way these companies are, but make no mistake, Facebook does a whole lot of it in trying to keep malicious threats off their platform. But the viewer is right. That's not their primary business. And the viewer makes an interesting point as well, which is because blocking malware is not Facebook's primary business, selling ads and keeping people online longer is, you do have to ask the question about, as many are when it comes to fake news and things like that were promulgated through Facebook and other social media, prior to the 2016 election, where are the priorities for a company? Security is obviously a priority for Facebook. Is it the priority? I don't know that it's the priority for any company that's in the business of making money. Next question here is, if I got this message, I'd be afraid that Facebook was serving me malware. Is this something that I could encounter? Absolutely. This question speaks to the heart of what this show today is about. Again, for years, we've told people if something pops up on your computer and you didn't ask for it, you don't want it, back away as fast as possible. Don't click, don't enter information, don't do anything. If something comes to you unsolicited, you probably don't want it. This is a rule for life. This is not just a rule for online security. This is my guiding principle in life. And the viewer is absolutely right. If you get an alert like these, you absolutely should be concerned that this could be a hack. Now, that doesn't mean you do nothing, because again, Facebook, as far as we can tell, obviously has users, best interests in mind when it serves these kinds of alerts. So what's incumbent upon users, in my opinion, is to research whether these alerts are actually real. And again, you can do that most of the time with a simple Google search to figure out. Facebook, in fact, we pulled this from Facebook's website. Facebook will give you examples of what these alerts look like. And if you look at that and you compare the two, that will give you a pretty good indication that the alert is real. Now, again, every cybersecurity expert who's watching the show is probably pulling their hair out saying, yes, of course, but those can be spoofed. Yes, indeed they can, but many are not. And for the average user of Facebook, it's a very simple test to try to figure out just, the basic question of, is this a real alert or not? And then subsequent to that, when Facebook asks you to download specific software, it's incumbent upon you to make sure that you are downloading legitimate software. And one way to do that, and I counsel this for people all the time, if Facebook says you need to download the Trend Micro antivirus program, or you need to download the ESET antivirus program, you can do that on your own. You don't have to go through the links that Facebook provides you. You can go to those companies' websites yourself and download that software. And that's another step toward validating the information. It's like if you get a phone call and the person on the other end of the line says, "Hi, this is your bank. This is Bank of America. We've got a question about your account." You can say, "Thank you for the call. I'm going to hang up. I'm going to call the main number for Bank of America, and I'm going to validate myself that this call is real." I do this all the time. I counsel people to do that all the time. Just because you've gotten an alert doesn't necessarily mean it's malicious, but you do have to take a few steps to make sure that what you're clicking on or what you're responding to, is actually real. And there's some pretty decent ways to do that. None of these things are foolproof, but they are pretty good, a good way to start. Next question here. Thanks for all these questions. Please feel free to keep them coming in. We appreciate them. So how do I remove the malware if I actually have it? Well, if you've determined that this is a good question, because if you've gone through the steps of, number one, determining that the alert is real, number two, determining that there may actually be a problem with your computer, and then number three, you've decided I need to do something about it, downloading those links, clicking on those links, is a pretty good way to do like a basic scan of your systems. Now, I will point this out. Operating systems, and we've talked about this before on the show, but operating systems and software in general has gotten much, much better at detecting security threats on its own, without antivirus, without any third-party program. So I will say, if you're running modern software in your computer, you're going to be far more protected than if you're running outdated software. And if you're not patching your system, you're not accepting those automatic updates, you're at far more risk than people who are accepting those automatic updates. With that rant aside, if you've decided you want to try to remove this malware from your system, part of the controversy around Facebook's approach has been individuals, like we showed here, these are some examples, who say, I followed the links, I downloaded the software, it caused more problems on my computer. This is not an inconsequential concern. This is not an unreasonable thing to be upset about. Security software does this. Security software is very, very unique in that when you download a piece of security software, you literally give it access to basically your entire computer. They have access to all the files, all the traffic. There's so much access you give a security program, which in turn results in its ability to do things on your computer that you may not like. You're downloading it because you want it to remove malware. But these programs are not perfect. I mean, if they were, there'd be no hacking. So what sometimes these programs will do is they might conflict. They might conflict with another antivirus program, and they may subsume in some ways the other antivirus program and block certain capabilities of those other programs. It can be quite frustrating, and this is what some of these users of Facebook are responding to, which is, look, I did what you said I was supposed to do, and then I wound up with more problems. So I would say, if you determine that there is a problem and you would like to correct it, click the links you're given once you've determined they're legitimate, and then download the program that is suggested. But be aware, if there are glitches, that result from that, do what you need to do to get back online is the basic message. If that gets you back onto Facebook and there continue to be problems that you believe are caused by these security programs, remove the security programs from your computer. You think of it as a one-time use. You can go investigate whatever other security software you'd like to have on your computer, but it's undoubtedly a headache if this is not what you're expecting logging into the site. So I hope that answers the question. Next question here. We've got a lot of good ones coming in. Can this affect your phone or Instagram? Since Facebook is attached to my Instagram account? Well, I will say I haven't seen a lot of chatter about this being something that Instagram is flagging people to, but the viewer is right. Since your accounts are connected, and Facebook is the parent company of both the Facebook platform and Instagram, it stands to reason if Instagram isn't doing this now that it might, at some point. And in response to the first question, could this affect your phone as well? The answer is yes. Everything that we've seen, everything that we've read from Facebook, as well as users, is that this affects any device. Facebook is kind of agnostic when it comes to diagnosing malware. If the malware is on your phone, which is less common, I should say, it will flag there. If the malware is on your PC, which is more common, especially if it's an older and out-of-date PC, then it will flag there. And Facebook could also flag on your account. If someone's stolen your username and password, and they live a million miles away, you've never met them, but they're logging in from somewhere else, that is something that will flag for them as well. So really, any device could be affected. But again, my standard stock advice is if you get an alert like the ones we showed before, investigate it. It doesn't mean, this is a new era in security. I mean, this goes against, advice that we've given people for many, many years. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means that companies are changing the way we think about this. We've got a bunch more questions too, but I wanted to show you another example of this. And again, sorry if you can't see this. I'll just describe what this is. But this is Comcast. So I wrote a few years ago about how Comcast and other internet providers are doing effectively the same thing. Internet providers have extraordinary visibility into network traffic. It's what they do, is process network traffic. And as a result, they're very, very good at detecting when a computer on its network is malicious and is doing bad things. So what Comcast started doing several years ago, more than several, many years ago, was alerting people with essentially the same thing that Facebook is. When this malicious software is detected on your computer. Comcast Constant Guard has identified one or more of your devices that may be infected with a bot. We strongly recommend that you click on the button below to remove malicious software from your device and help protect your identity. Now, what happens after you click the link is effectively what Facebook is asking you to do, to download a program, remove the infection or the suspected infection from your computer, and then resume your normal internet activities. But again, the reason I bring this Comcast example up is I remember looking at this a number of years ago and talking to people who got these alerts and were upset. They believed they were infected. Not with malware, with this. They believed this was a product of the malware, that this was not a legitimate message from Comcast. And I should point out that there are examples in Japan, actually, especially. Japan is kind of a test bed for this type of alerting system, and they've been quite effective. Up to 30% of respondents, up to 30% of the people who see these warnings in Japan, which are kind of centrally managed, will actually download the malware removal tool. That's a really high rate of success for a security program that is effectively voluntary. So I don't want anybody watching the show to think that these alerts are inherently harmful. They actually can be quite helpful. But as with Comcast, as with Facebook, it's incumbent upon you, and I cannot stress this enough, to try and verify whether the alert you're receiving is real. That's not going to be a perfect process, but simply checking the language through Google, is actually an easy step in the right direction. It's not foolproof, but it's a step in the right direction. Got some other great questions here. I don't want to be forced to download unwanted software. Is there any way around this? Well, this question is getting to the heart of why some people are so upset. What they're saying is, Facebook, can't I just run an online scan? I don't want to download anything. And what Facebook is forcing people to do is download third-party software. Again, this is not a function, a normal function of Facebook, which is we're going to come in and clean your computer. In fact, Facebook says Facebook says that one of the features of Facebook is that it collects so little information about your actual computer, there might be a number of false positives, and that's a result of them being restrained in what they actually collect about your machine. So you can look at that as being, okay, that's a good sign. Facebook isn't collecting as much as it could about me. And also, that's going to increase the false positive rate. So, I hate to say this, but in response to this viewer's question, if you've been given this warning and you truly are locked out of your account and you determine the notification is authentic, you may have to download that software. We've seen comments. Wired.com had a great piece on this that we saw. Where people were flagged with this alert and told to download software for a PC when they're on a Mac, and they couldn't get the right the malware removal tool for their machine, which obviously is very frustrating. You've agreed to do this thing that Facebook's forcing you to do, but the malware removal tool is wrong. Again, Facebook has said, some of these notifications might be malicious in themselves, the result of malware authors trying to infect your computer. But the point remains, you may have to download some of this software to remove whatever particular infection these companies are flagging for you. And I would say this question speaks to a much larger point as well, which is, what is a company's responsibility, whether they're an ISP like Comcast or whether they're a social media platform like Facebook, when it comes to trying to clean up your machine? Cleaning up your machine helps these companies. And in fact, you might call it a responsibility of these companies to play an active role in that process. However, these companies run into very, very tricky situations when it comes to forcing users to clean up their machines or blocking them from their accounts if they don't clean up their machines. Because as I said earlier, bots don't act on their own. They take root on legitimate people's computers. And those legitimate people have an expectation that they're going to be able to get online. Let me rip through a few more of these questions here. We're almost out of time. What if you're logging onto Facebook from a cell phone? I already kind of answered this question, but as far as we understand, these alerts will ping to you regardless of the device you're on. So there are three main things, as far as we can tell, that Facebook looks at. It looks at device, whether that's a PC or a phone, or in addition to that, they look at your account. So account, phone, PC, and those are the three data points that kind of go into determining, is this malicious traffic and behavior from those devices. Next question, whose antivirus software is Facebook using when they scan our machines? Well, as I mentioned earlier, they have several partners, including Trend Micro and a company called ESET. These are legitimate, above board antivirus companies, but as previous viewers have mentioned, what if I don't want Trend Micro on my machine? What if I don't want ESET, on my machine? And that's it's a legitimate question, and companies like Facebook are going to have to grapple with that if they're forcing users or strongly recommending users to download those programs, however valid they might be. Next question, is there a place I can go for good tips on this and future references? I wouldn't recommend one particular service, but what I would say is there is plenty of material online from the Electronic Frontier Foundation and others, especially, about just safe browsing habits. You'll find, if you Google safe browsing habits, you'll find 1,000,001 recommendations from security companies and others. Be aware of any company pushing their particular product, but some of the advice I gave today hopefully will be helpful, which is, if you get something unwanted online, and I'm a broken record about this, if you get something unwanted online, such as a pop-up alert or an email, it doesn't inherently mean it's malicious, but if you don't want it, you truly don't want it. If you didn't ask for it, you truly don't want it. But if there seems to be something credible there, like these Facebook alerts, just investigate whether what you're clicking on is real, and just be mindful every step of the way and be aware that everything you click, every link where you put your personal information, could be a phishing scam. It doesn't mean don't click anything. And that's one thing that regular viewers of the show, I hope, appreciate, is I'm not telling you unplug your computer and disconnect from the internet. You can click these links. Just be careful when you do and investigate them even a little bit. It should take 15 seconds, and that could save you a whole world of headache. Last question here, which I think is a funny one, is why is security software so bloated? I believe what this viewer is asking is when you run security software in your system, it tends to take up a lot of memory. It tends to take up a lot of CPU cycles. The reason for that is security software puts in a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to scan all the files on your system, all the network traffic coming into your system, everything you're downloading, everything you're adding to the system. These things are constantly on. Now, they're a lot better now than they were before. 10 years ago or so, these things used way more compute power than they do now, but still, this is a high-intensity endeavor running security software on your computer. And I'll give you one quick aside before we sign off for today. One of the reasons we've been told the U.S. government came to believe that Kaspersky Lab, a Russian company, antivirus maker, which we've written a lot about, and actually which Facebook used to partner with for this program, but has since discontinued because of Kaspersky's reported ties to Russian intelligence, which we've written on. One of the reasons the U.S. government came to believe that Kaspersky Lab could be an instrument of the Russian government was kind of a backhanded compliment. The software was so good at existing in such a small space on your computer, using less CPU cycles, using less memory than basically anything else out there. Basically, the program was so good at what it did that the U.S. government started to believe, we think they got help here. And we think the help they got came from government services in Russia. Now, that's never been proven, but I think it's a funny anecdote about just how much resource, how many resources these programs use on your computer. And actually, there's one last question here that we'll get to, and then we will sign off. We're almost out of time. Has there ever been a reported hacking attack on Facebook? The answer to that is this. What you haven't seen is a report like Equifax breach or like the Yahoo breach, where Facebook was looted for hundreds of millions or billions of accounts. That hasn't happened, at least that hasn't been reported. But I will say this. Facebook and Google and Yahoo and any of these other big companies, they are under constant attack. Now, that attack can come in the form of hackers trying to directly penetrate their systems. Facebook is one of the world's biggest targets for any number of nation states or criminal groups. Or hackers trying to game their system, much like the Russians did in the 2016, run-up to the 2016 election here in the U.S., by posting, by using the system against itself, either posting propaganda or tricking people into downloading malware on their computer or giving up their credentials, things like that. So while I would say if you do a search of all the world's biggest breaches, you wouldn't see Facebook on there. That does not mean Facebook is a pure and clean platform. That company is under attack all the time, just like these other ones. And it's a fight that they take very seriously. They've invested a lot of money in it. They've hired some really great people, people who are well known in the cybersecurity community. But that doesn't mean that they're 100% effective. So you should always be careful. Whenever you're on any of these services, and my advice is always going to be the same, which is if somebody sends you a link, you don't know what it is, interrogate it just a little bit, and that might save you a world of headache. So with that, we are out of time. Thank you so much for the questions. We really appreciate them. Feel free to catch me after the show. I'm on Twitter at JordanR1000, Jordan, the letter R, 1000. I'm happy to answer any of your questions offline after the show. And as always, please do check out our webpage, which is bloomberg.com/technology. That's the global technology landing page, where we've got all kinds of great content from our global technology team, including archived editions of this show, and another by my colleague Mark Gurman called Gadgets with Gurman. We also have the Decrypted podcast, which we really like doing, listed there as well. Thanks again. Signing off from Digital Defense, and we'll see you here next week, same time, noon Eastern, broadcasting from Washington, D.C. Take care.